The crystalline spires of Lumus Prime caught the light of 3 moons, casting prismatic shadows across the Etherean capital. In the Grand Observatory, Chief Sentinel Lyra adjusted her floating meditation pod, her translucent skin rippling with patterns of deep concern. The holographic display before her showed what every Etherean had dreaded since achieving spaceflight: the approach of the swarm. "Confirmation received, Chief Sentinel," announced Observer Theron, his skin pulsing with anxiety patterns. The swarm fleet consists of approximately 300 vessels, all matching the signatures from the Centauri massacre. Lyra's inner lights dimmed with sorrow. The Etherians were a species of scholars and artists, their bodies evolved for the delicate manipulation of light and energy. Their civilization had flourished in the gentle embrace of their homeworld's low gravity, leading them to develop remarkable technologies focused on creation rather than destruction. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "For planetary cycles until they reach our outer defense grid," Theron replied. "Our sensors indicate they've already begun their harvest protocols." The swarm's reputation was well known throughout the galaxy. They were resource strippers, consuming everything in their path: minerals, biomass, technology. Their ships were crude but effective, built from the salvaged remains of countless civilizations they had destroyed. Lyra activated the Council Chamber's neural interface, sending out an emergency summons to the Guidance Assembly. Within moments, the chamber filled with the gentle chiming of arrival bells as the most respected minds of Etherian society gathered. "Our defensive capabilities are insufficient," announced military observer Venna, her usually bright aura now dim with resignation. "The swarm outnumbers our ships 10 to 1. Our weapons are designed for deflection and disablement, not destruction." "The evacuation protocols began one council member, but Lyra cut them off with a pulse of red light. "There isn't time," she said. 300 ships can form a blockade faster than we can evacuate even a tenth of our population." Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the subtle harmonics of their communal fear. Then, from the back of the chamber, a voice spoke up: "Scholar Rin, keeper of the Forbidden Archives." "There might be one option," he said, his skin shifting to the deep purple of uncertainty. "We could contact the humans." The chamber erupted in waves of yellow and orange, colors of shock and fear. Every Etherian knew of the humans. They were the galaxy's newest spacefaring race, discovered just 2 cycles ago. Their homeworld was a nightmare by Etherian standards: crushing gravity, extreme temperature variations, aggressive biodiversity, and atmospheric pressure that would shatter Etherian bones. "The Deathworlders?" Venna's voice trembled. "They're savages. Their bodies contain hostile microorganisms. They can survive radiation levels that would kill us instantly. They eat by physically destroying matter with internal acid production." "Precisely," Rin replied, bringing up archived footage of human activities. "They are everything we are not. Everything the swarm has never encountered." The assembly watched in horrified fascination as the images showed humans performing what they considered normal activities: running for kilometers, lifting massive weights, eating solid food with their sharp teeth, surviving in environments that would kill most sentient species. Lyra studied the footage, her analytical mind racing. The humans were new to the galactic community, but they had already established a reputation for both technological prowess and a strange concept they called humanitarian aid. Their diplomatic messages consistently offered assistance to civilizations in need, despite most species' reluctance to interact with such physically intimidating beings. "Show me their combat capabilities," she commanded. New images appeared: human warships engaging in military exercises. Unlike the elegant Etherian vessels or the crude swarm ships, human craft were built to withstand conditions that would tear most ships apart. Their crews could survive maneuvers that would kill most species, allowing for combat tactics that seemed to defy physics. "We created the Deathworlder classification to warn our people about hostile environments," Lyra said slowly. "But perhaps, Perhaps we need the inhabitants of such a world to protect us from a truly hostile force. She straightened in her pod, her skin shifting to the blue of decision. Prepare a distress signal. We will request aid from the human defense fleet. Chief Sentinel, Vena protested, inviting humans to our homeworld, they could break our buildings just by walking. Their very breath contains enough bacteria to make us ill. And yet, Lyra replied, they have never shown aggression toward peaceful species. They value protection of the weak, a concept the swarm cannot comprehend. She activated the emergency beacon. We need warriors who can survive what we cannot. We need humans. The signal fired into space, racing toward Earth at faster than light speeds. The Etherians had just done something unprecedented, they had asked the monsters for help, hoping that these creatures from a death world would prove to be their salvation. As the signal pulsed across the cosmos, Lyra watched the approaching swarm fleet. For the first time since the threat appeared, she felt something new ripple across her skin, not the blue of certainty or the yellow of fear, but the bright green of hope. Captain Rachel Sterling was in the middle of a combat simulation when the emergency alert flashed across her neural interface. She immediately dropped out of the virtual scenario, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to transition seamlessly to real-world awareness. The message that scrolled across her vision made her heart race. Priority 1 distress signal, Etherian civilization, swarm threat imminent. Computer, full briefing, she commanded, striding toward the bridge of the UES Stormbreaker. The ship's AI complied, projecting detailed information about the Etherians as she walked. Fascinating, Rachel muttered, studying the biological data of the crystalline aliens. Their bodies were works of art, translucent, bioluminescent, and incredibly fragile. They could photosynthesize energy and manipulate light in ways humans had only dreamed of, but their bones would shatter under Earth normal gravity. The bridge doors slid open, revealing her crew already at battle stations. Her XO, Commander David Park, looked up from the tactical display. Captain, Fleet Command has authorized Operation Guardian. We're designated as Task Force Leader. How many ships can we muster? Rachel asked, sliding into her command chair. 12 warships within immediate response range, David replied. The Stormbreaker, plus 3 Titan-class battleships, 5 Raptor-class destroyers, and 3 Phantom-class stealth frigates. Lieutenant Jasmine Rodriguez, their sensor specialist, spoke up from her station. Captain, I've analyzed the Etherian transmission. The swarm fleet includes approximately 300 vessels, but their tech level is relatively primitive, they rely on salvage technology and brute force tactics. Rachel smiled, an expression that would have terrified most non-human species. Quality over quantity, then. What's the status of our experimental gravitational warfare systems? The gravity pulse generators are at 100% efficiency, Chief Engineer Omar Hassan reported through the comm. The Etherians' low-gravity environment actually works in our favor, we can use the gravitational differentials to our advantage. Rachel nodded, formulating a plan. The swarm had never encountered humans before. They didn't know that Earth's gravity was nearly triple that of most inhabited worlds, that human ships were built to withstand forces that would crush most alien vessels into atoms. All hands, battle stations, she announced shipwide. We're about to show the galaxy why you don't threaten peaceful species when there are humans around. The human fleet assembled with precision that would have seemed impossible to most alien observers. Their ships moved with aggressive grace, performing maneuvers that would have killed most species' crews from G-forces alone. The Stormbreaker led the formation as they prepared for the faster-than-light jump to Etherian space. On the Etherian homeworld, Chief Sentinel Lyra watched in amazement as the human fleet arrived. Their ships were unlike anything she had ever seen, dark, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible speed and precision, their engines burning hot enough to leave afterimages in her sensitive vision. By the 3 moons, Observer Theron whispered, his skin flickering with patterns of awe and terror. They're beautiful in their own terrifying way. A communication request came through, and Lyra steeled herself before accepting. Captain Sterling's image appeared in the chamber, and several Aetherian Council members instinctively floated backward. The human's solid form, predatory eyes, and barely contained physical power were overwhelming to their senses. "Chief Sentinel," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice soft and her teeth hidden. "The United Earth Fleet responds to your call for aid. We've brought 12 of our most advanced warships, and our crews are ready to defend your world." "Only 12? Military observer Venna couldn't hide her dismay. "The swarm has 300 vessels." Rachel's smile made several Aetherians emit distress patterns. "Trust me, that makes it a fair fight. We've analyzed your world's crystalline structures and magnetic field. With your permission, we'd like to integrate them into our defense strategy." Lyra forced herself to maintain composure as she studied the human captain. Here was a creature who could probably crush an Aetherian's bones with an accidental touch, commanding ships that could perform maneuvers that would liquefy Aetherian bodies. Yet there was something in those predatory eyes, a fierce protectiveness, a burning determination to defend. "We welcome your aid, Captain Sterling," Lyra said formally. "Though I must ask, why would you risk your ships and crews for a species so different from your own?" Rachel's expression softened slightly. "Because that's what humans do. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We grew strong not just to survive, but to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The swarm preys on the weak. We're here to show them what happens when you pick a fight with humanity's friends." As if to punctuate her words, alarms began blaring throughout the Aetherian city. The swarm fleet had arrived at the system's edge, their ships burning toward the planet like a cloud of locusts. Rachel straightened in her command chair. "All ships, battle formations. Let's show these scavengers what happens when they run into something they can't bully. Today, we're the monsters they should have been afraid of." The human fleet moved into position, their powerful engines flaring like newborn stars. Behind them, the crystalline spires of the Aetherian cities sparkled with reflected light, about to become the backdrop for a battle that would change the galaxy's understanding of humanity forever. The void above Loomis Prime erupted in light as the swarm fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Their ships looked like twisted metal sculptures, each one cobbled together from the remnants of conquered civilizations. In the lead vessel's command center, Swarm Commander Craxus observed the meager defense force with disdain. "Only 12 unknown ships," he growled, his carapace clicking in amusement. "The Aetherians must be truly desperate to hire such a small mercenary fleet." His tactical officer, itself a cybernetically enslaved member of a conquered race, spoke in monotone. "Warning, unknown ship designs. No match in database. Energy readings exceed normal parameters. Irrelevant," Craxus dismissed. "Begin standard harvest protocol. Overwhelm them with numbers." Aboard the Stormbreaker, Rachel watched the swarm fleet's approach with practiced calm. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, analysis? Their ships are poorly maintained but heavily armed," Jasmine reported. "Lots of salvaged plasma cannons and mass drivers. No standardization, each ship is unique, probably built from whatever they could steal." "Perfect," Rachel smiled. "That means no coordinated shield frequencies. Commander Park, initialize Operation Thunderstrike. All ships, execute on my mark." The human fleet split into 3 groups, a maneuver that would have seemed suicidal against such overwhelming numbers. But these were human ships, crewed by beings who had evolved to chase down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. "What are they doing?" Craxus demanded as the human ships accelerated toward his fleet. "No one attacks the swarm head-on. Fire all weapons." The swarm fleet launched a devastating barrage, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The energy weapons splashed against human shields designed to withstand the pressures of close solar orbits. The mass drivers launched projectiles that would have torn through normal ships, but these vessels were built to survive in gravity wells that would crush most alien craft. Minimal damage, Omar reported from engineering, his voice steady despite the massive forces involved in their evasive maneuvers. Our new metamaterial armor is holding. Shield grid at 92%. Rachel's voice rang through the fleet channel. All ships, return fire. Show them what Earth weapons can do. The human response was devastating. Railguns accelerated projectiles to velocities that would be impossible in most ships, the crew surviving G-forces that would turn other species to paste. Plasma weapons, refined through humanity's mastery of fusion power, burned through swarm shields like paper. Impossible. Kraxus slammed his clawed appendage into his command console. How are they surviving those maneuvers? Their crews should be dead. The battle devolved into chaos, but it was a chaos that favored the humans. While the swarm relied on overwhelming numbers and brute force, the human ships danced through space with terrifying precision. They pulled turns that should have torn their ships apart, absorbed hits that should have vaporized them, and struck back with weapons that treated swarm armor like tissue paper. In the Aetherian command center, the alien leaders watched in awe. "Look at how they move," Lyra whispered, her skin rippling with patterns of amazement. "The gravitational stresses they're enduring, it's beyond anything we thought possible." The human fleet strategy became clear as the battle progressed. They were using the Aetherians' crystalline cities as massive prisms, reflecting and amplifying their energy weapons in patterns the swarm couldn't predict. The magnetic field of Loomis Prime became a weapon in human hands, used to curve railgun shots at impossible angles. Executing Maneuver Epsilon, Rachel announced. Gravitational warfare systems, full power. The Stormbreaker's experimental systems came online, projecting focused gravity fields that would have crushed most ships. But the swarm vessels, built from scavenged parts never designed to work together, began to buckle and tear under forces that human ships were built to withstand. 20% of their fleet disabled, Jasmine reported with professional satisfaction. Their formation is breaking down. They've never encountered an enemy that could match their durability. The battle reached its turning point when the human stealth frigates revealed their true purpose. They had slipped through the chaos of battle, positioning themselves throughout the swarm fleet. On Rachel's command, they activated their gravity pulse generators simultaneously. The space around the swarm ships distorted as localized gravity fields fluctuated wildly. Ships designed for plunder and intimidation began to crumple as their structural integrity failed. Kraxus watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by forces he had never considered weapons. "Retreat," he screamed, but it was too late. The human fleet pressed their advantage, their superior maneuverability allowing them to herd the remaining swarm ships into killing zones. The precisely coordinated gravitational pulses created zones of intense stress that ripped through the poorly maintained vessels. From the surface of Loomis Prime, the battle looked like a dance of light and shadow. Human ships moved with impossible grace, their weapons creating patterns of destruction that the artistic Aetherians couldn't help but find beautiful in their terrible way. "Status report," Rachel commanded as the last swarm ships either surrendered or tried to flee. "Enemy fleet at 60% losses," David reported. "Another 25% disabled or surrendered. The remainder are attempting to retreat. Our casualties, 2 ships with moderate damage, no loss of life." Rachel opened a channel to the Aetherian command center. "Chief Sentinel, space superiority has been achieved. But we're detecting swarm drop pods that made it through during the initial engagement. Request permission to deploy our ground forces." Lyra's skin pulsed with patterns of both relief and concern. The space battle had been incredible enough, but now they would see humans fight on the ground, in person. "Permission granted, Captain Sterling. May the 3 moons protect us all." The human ships began launching drop pods of their own, carrying Marines trained on a death world to protect beings of crystal and light. The ground battle was about to begin, and the Etherians would learn that humans were even more impressive, and terrifying, up close. Lieutenant Naomi Jackson stood at the entrance of the Etherian Science Archive, her powered combat armor humming quietly in the low gravity. The crystalline building behind her housed thousands of years of peaceful scientific advancement, exactly the kind of target the swarm would love to strip bare. Perimeter check, she sub-vocalized through her neural link. Her squad of Marine combat engineers responded with crisp acknowledgments as they finished setting up their defense grid. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Private First Class Reza Patel whispered, watching a group of Etherians glide past. The aliens moved like living prisms, their translucent bodies refracting the light of their 3 moons. Hard to believe they developed faster-than-light travel when they can barely survive their own weight in standard gravity. "Different evolutionary paths, different strengths," Naomi replied. "They developed ways to manipulate light and energy that we're still trying to understand. Our job is to make sure they survive long enough to teach us." Their conversation was interrupted by a rumbling that shook the crystalline streets. Swarm drop pods were punching through the atmosphere, their crude designs reflecting their builders' lack of concern for subtlety or finesse. "All units, combat positions," Naomi ordered. Her squad moved with fluid grace despite their heavy armor, each step carefully measured in the low gravity. They had trained for this, fighting in environments where a single misplaced foot could shatter the ground beneath them. The first wave of swarm troops burst from their pods, their cybernetically enhanced bodies bristling with stolen weapons. They charged forward with typical swarm tactics, overwhelming force, no subtlety, no concern for collateral damage. "Engage," Naomi commanded. The Marines opened fire with weapons designed for Earth's gravity and atmosphere. In Loomis Prime's lower gravity, their rounds hit with devastating effect, punching through swarm armor like paper. "They're not stopping," Reza called out as more swarm troops poured from their pods. The cybernetic warriors seemed to care nothing for their losses, climbing over their fallen comrades to press the attack. Naomi switched to her neural interface. "Engineering team, execute Protocol Prism." The defensive grid they had set up came to life. The Marines had spent hours working with Etherian scientists, learning how to use the crystalline architecture to their advantage. Now, laser repeaters bounced their beams off carefully aligned surfaces, creating a web of deadly light that cut through the swarm ranks. Inside the science archive, a group of Etherian researchers watched the battle through their sensitive optical membranes. They saw the humans move in ways that seemed to defy physics, jumping distances that would have been impossible in normal gravity, absorbing impacts that would have shattered Etherian bones, fighting with a ferocity that both terrified and amazed them. "How can they endure such violence?" one researcher asked, his skin flickering with patterns of distress. "They evolved as pursuit predators," another replied, watching Naomi shoulder check a swarm warrior through a wall. "Their bodies are designed to take damage and keep fighting." The battle intensified as the swarm brought in their heavier units, massive, cybernetically enhanced shock troops salvaged from a dozen conquered worlds. They towered over the humans, their weapons capable of reducing Etherian buildings to dust. "Bravo team, fall back to position Delta," Naomi ordered, watching the monsters approach. "Charlie team, prepare for gravity gambit." The Marines executed their maneuver with practiced precision. In the low gravity, they could perform feats that would have been impossible on Earth. They used their powered armor's enhanced strength to launch themselves high into the air, coming down on the swarm heavy units from above. "Remember your training," Naomi shouted as she led the charge. "Use their weight against them." The Marines had trained extensively for low-gravity combat. While the massive swarm units struggled to adjust their balance, the humans moved like acrobats, using their enemies' momentum to send them crashing into each other. Inside their command center, the swarm ground commander watched in frustration as their forces were systematically dismantled. These weren't the fragile Etherians they had expected to harvest, these were warriors who seemed to treat combat like a dance, every movement precise and lethal. "They're protecting the archives," the commander raged. "Launch the Titan units. Crush them all." The ground shook as massive walker units emerged from larger drop pods. They were the pride of the swarm's ground forces, four-legged monstrosities built from the strongest materials they had stolen, armed with enough firepower to level cities. Naomi watched them approach and smiled behind her visor. Just as expected. Engineering team, initiate Operation Earthshaker. The Marines had spent their preparation time doing more than just setting up defensive grids. They had studied the crystalline composition of Etherian architecture, calculated resonance frequencies, and planted specialized vibration devices throughout the area. "All units, sonic dampeners to maximum," Naomi ordered. Then she sent the signal. The devices activated simultaneously, sending precise frequencies through the crystalline structures. The sound was barely noticeable to human ears, but the effect on the environment was devastating. The crystal began to resonate, creating waves of energy that traveled through the ground. The massive swarm walkers, designed for brute force rather than finesse, suddenly found themselves trying to maintain balance on ground that vibrated at their exact structural weak points. One by one, they began to topple, their weight becoming their greatest weakness. "Push forward," Naomi commanded. "Don't let them regroup." The Marines charged, their powered armor allowing them to move safely across the resonating crystal surface. They attacked the fallen walkers with shaped charges placed at precisely calculated points, turning the swarm's greatest weapons into fields of scrap metal. As the battle turned decisively in humanity's favor, the Etherian researchers emerged from their shelter. They watched in amazement as the humans began helping their wounded, treating injuries that would have killed most species with casual efficiency. "Your people are incredible," one of the researchers said to Naomi, his skin glowing with patterns of gratitude and awe. "We never imagined that such strength could be used so precisely, so carefully." Naomi removed her helmet, causing several Etherians to float backward at the sight of her predatory features. "We learned long ago that true strength isn't just about how hard you can hit," she said. "It's about knowing when and how to use that strength to protect others." Above them, the last of the swarm ships were being driven from the system by the human fleet. On the ground, the remaining swarm forces were surrendering or being eliminated. The battle for Loomis Prime was nearly over, but its impact on galactic politics was just beginning. 1 month after the Battle of Loomis Prime, the Etherian capital gleamed with renewed purpose. The crystalline spires had been repaired, their surfaces now incorporating subtle modifications suggested by human engineers, changes that would make them more resistant to future attacks while enhancing their natural beauty. In the Grand Assembly Chamber, Chief Sentinel Lyra stood before a gathered crowd of both Etherians and humans. Her skin rippled with patterns of pride and hope as she addressed the assembly. "Today marks a historic moment," she announced, her voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "For the first time in our history, we establish a permanent diplomatic and military alliance with the human species." Captain Rachel Sterling stood at attention nearby, her dress uniform pristine. She had learned to move carefully in the Etherian structures, though the local architects had already begun reinforcing certain areas to accommodate human visitors. Behind her, a mixed group of human Marines and Etherian researchers worked together, sharing knowledge about their respective technologies. "The Battle of Loomis Prime taught us something profound," Lyra continued. "We had classified Earth as a death world, its inhabitants as creatures to be feared. We saw humanity's strength as something terrifying. But we were wrong. Their strength wasn't just physical, it was their capacity to use that strength to protect others." On display screens throughout the chamber, footage played from the battle. Human ships performing maneuvers that would have killed most species, Marines fighting with controlled precision to protect Etherian structures, medics treating the wounded of both sides with equal care. "The swarm believed that strength meant the right to take," Rachel added, stepping forward to address the assembly. They never understood that true strength lies in the ability to protect. Earth's gravity made us strong, but our humanity taught us how to use that strength. In the weeks following the battle, the partnership between humans and Etherians had grown in unexpected ways. Human engineers worked with Etherian scientists to develop new technologies that combined Earth's durability with Etherian elegance. The Etherians' mastery of light and energy complemented human innovations in materials and propulsion. Our species could not be more different physically, Lyra observed, her skin glowing with patterns of wisdom. Yet we have found common ground in our desire to build rather than destroy, to protect rather than dominate. The assembly watched as new images appeared, human children carefully touching the reinforced walls of an Etherian school, fascinated by the way the crystal responded to their presence. Etherian scientists working in specially designed environmental suits to visit human research stations. Both species learning from each other, growing stronger together. The swarm's attack was intended to destroy us, Lyra said. Instead, it has led to the greatest advancement in our civilization's history. We are no longer alone in our sector of space. We have protectors, friends who can stand against threats we never could have faced alone. Rachel nodded in agreement. And we have gained allies who remind us that strength isn't everything. Your species' achievements in art, science, and healing have already begun to influence human development. Together, we're stronger than either of us could be alone. In orbit above Loomis Prime, the first joint human-Etherian defense fleet performed training exercises. Etherian ships, with their advanced energy manipulation systems, worked in concert with human vessels built to withstand the harshest conditions. They were developing new tactics that combined Etherian precision with human durability. The galaxy is changing, Lyra concluded. The swarm's defeat has sent a message to all who would prey on peaceful civilizations. Humanity stands ready to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and we Etherians will support them with our technology and wisdom. As the assembly concluded, Rachel walked with Lyra through the newly reinforced corridors of the capital. Your people have adapted remarkably well to our presence, she observed. I know we can be intimidating. Lyra's skin rippled with amusement. We've learned to see past the surface. Yes, you humans are physically powerful enough to shatter our bones by accident. But you're also gentle enough to catch a falling crystal without breaking it. That control, that choice to protect rather than destroy, that's what makes you truly remarkable. Outside, the 3 moons of Loomis Prime cast their light across the crystal city, their rays refracted and enhanced by Etherian technology. Human ships patrolled the system, their presence a deterrent to any who might threaten the peace. But they were no longer seen as monsters from a death world, they were guardians, proof that evolution on a harsh world could produce not just strength, but wisdom. The legacy of the Battle of Loomis Prime would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. It marked the beginning of a new era, where the combined strength of humanity and the wisdom of the Etherians would forge a path toward a more secure and enlightened future. The Deathworlders had become protectors, and in doing so, had found their true purpose among the stars.